The Dice Tower is made possible by listeners like you. Thank you for your support. And by Cool Stuff Inc. Cool Stuff, in stock at CoolStuffInc.com. The Dice Tower, episode 536.
The best of 5 years ago, 2013.
Welcome to The Dice Tower, a podcast about board games and card games, and especially the people who play them. On today's show, Tom and I look back at 2017 with some end-of-year questions from the mailbag and ring in 2018 with a look at our upcoming fundraiser. Jeff looks at the latest advances in self-learning gaming software, and we jump back 5 years to revisit our top 10 games from 2013. I'm Eric Summerer, and here's your host, the Sven to my Olaf, Tom Vassell.
So I'm going to assume that this movie is 5 years old?
It is 5 years old, believe it or not. Yeah.
Wow. You know, I think this is one of the movies that has made more of an impression than any other Disney movie in the last 10 years, if only because of the songs.
Sure. Well, I mean, the music is fantastic.
I think the music's fantastic. It may be overused.
Yeah.
Like oversung, maybe.
Yes.
I don't know.
There is such a thing as overexposure.
There's only so many times you can hear Let It Go.
It's true. My son despises the song, so...
My children do not. However, they're now on The Greatest Showman that just came out.
Yeah?
About P.T. Barnum, so they're on those songs right now. So
Oh. Interesting.
Progress.
Yeah.
Hey, folks who are just tuning in, I'm Tom Vassell.
Hi there. I'm Eric Summerer, and Happy New Year.
Welcome to the first Dice Tower of 2018. Wow.
Oh, man.
Although... when we did Dice Tower tonight last week, I put the date as 2018, which doesn't happen often that I put the year ahead.
Yeah, that's that's odd. Usually it takes, you're still living in the past. You're just really already ready for the future.
Well, we are definitely ready. I'm excited. I'm excited every year as a new year to see what we're going to be doing. Later on in the show, we're going to talk about our Kickstarter and things that are coming up. That's starting in 2 days, so we hope that you guys, if you like our show, consider sponsoring us on that. But before we get to that, I'm sure you want to hear about some board games, and every once in a while, we talk about, all sorts of games, right? But every once in a while, we talk about big-name games, and that's today.
Okay.
It's all big-name stuff. There's no small games, no weird, esoteric games. These are all some of the biggest games of the year.
Okay.
Did I maybe hype that up too much?
I don't know.
It's actually true, though.
That's a lot of hype.
These are very, very big games.
I'm hoping to live up to that. We'll see.
Well, we'll start with my one game I just played, Gaia Project. This is certainly one of the most anticipated Euro games of the year because it is essentially a sequel to Terra Mystica, which is very highly regarded. I don't know if you've played Terra Mystica, Eric.
Oh, yes. I've played Terra Mystica a good number of times. I have not yet played Gaia, though.
Well, you almost have. Terra Mystica and Gaia Project are very, very similar. There's some differences in them. I'm going to actually have to sit down. I'm going to do my review of it. I probably may have already done a review by the time you hear this, but I'm going to need to go through it and see exactly what the differences are because it's been a long time since I played Terra Mystica. But essentially in this game, you are trying to score points through various ways like every other Euro game that's out there. And you are building little mining colonies on planets on this board that's set up at the beginning of the game. And each round of the game, there's 6 rounds of this game, you are going to take various actions that you will be spending resources on to take, trying to build other mines or upgrade your mines to other types of buildings. You can spend technology points to increase your technology. There's different technological tracks which will give you special abilities over the course of the game. You can eventually get a bunch of your mines and other buildings together and form a federation, which can get you a lot of extra bonus points. And you can find dead planets and terraforming them, forming a Gaia Project, which is the name of the game.
It is.
Except the last time I played, I didn't do that at all. Forget dead planets. I came in second, too, so I don't feel like, I was completely off base on that. It's just one of the strategies of the game. And there's so much, folks. I can't explain this over the thing, but there's some interesting things to this game. There's a tech. I forget what it's even called. I was about to call it Magic, but that's Terra Mystica. There's some track power cells or something where these things go around in a circle, and you'll move them from one spot to another spot to a third spot, and then on that third spot you can spend them to do all sorts of actions and cool things. And then you got to move them all back up through 2 spots again. This was something I wasn't keen on in Terra Mystica, but I might be coming around on this mechanism.
Okay,
I definitely do like the technology tracks. They're very diverse, and there's so many different things you can do with those. And I like this game somewhat better than Terra Mystica because the planets are more spread out. In Terra Mystica, there was the occasional rivers that would get in your way.
Right.
This game is basically full of rivers because very few planets are next to each other. So that changes up a lot of things. There's so many strategies in this game. And the biggest thing about this game is that every race is completely different. They have different special abilities. They have a building that when they build it gives them more special abilities and kind of a focus on what they're going to do. And so you're going to play each race very, very differently. And that is a pretty cool thing. I'm not like saying that this game is the greatest game ever and I'm going to be all on board with this game and be playing it in the future. But I did enjoy it more than I enjoyed Terra Mystica, and it's making me think maybe I should go back and play Terra Mystica again, although honestly this game looks way better than Terra Mystica. It looks gorgeous, plastic components and everything. But it is a hefty game. It's about 2 hours, but a lot of different actions going on in that time period. That is Gaia Project.
So you said that there's the planets are spread out a little bit more. There's more empty space between them. Is it easier to bridge between those gaps? Like in Terra Mystica, you have the rivers, and there's only a couple ways to get across the rivers. You have to build some bridges, or you have to get an ability that allows you to be adjacent over the river. Is it easier to bridge those gaps in Gaia Project?
Well, there's 3 ways off the top of my head that I know of. There's a technology track where it says you can build a planet that's adjacent to you, and if you move up farther on it, you can build 2 away, 3 away, etc.
Okay.
There's also some green cubes. For the life of me, I don't remember what they are. They're really cool little green cubes, like with 1/8 of them cut out. They look like Rubik's cubes with a piece missing, which is pretty neat. But anyway, you can spend these to go an extra 2 spaces away when you're doing a colony or building a new building. And then finally, there's one of the I forget what these things are called. There's these tiles that you take between turns that give you a special bonus. The first person to pass gets to pick between them. And one of those allows you to go farther away also.
Okay.
So there's that. I should mention that the game does each race has a planet that they're very comfortable on living on, and there's some planets that they're not comfortable living on. So if you want to put stuff on them, you have to terraform these planets, which is where the original game got its name from. And so you have to spend a lot of resources for that. So there's really so many different things going on in this game. And yet, once you follow your strategy, the choices are not like too much. It's like, well, do I want to build this? Which technology track do I want to move up on? I had a lot of great, juicy choices in it. So, yeah, I'm liking it. I don't know that I love it yet, but I still think it's a very fine game. Gaia Project.
Is the magic track... you said you like the magic track better, or the technology cycle thing better in this one. Does it do things differently than Terra Mystica, or is it just that you have more experience using it now?
I think it's a me thing.
Okay.
I'm not convinced that I'm not convinced that it's the game. I think it's pretty close.
Okay.
To it, but there's some ways to it's called power. There's more ways to mess with it, I think, maybe than there was before.
Okay.
So it's still essentially Terra Mystica in space, but there is new stuff in it. So, and I think the factions are different. I don't think they're the same as the original one.
Right. All right. Moving on to my first big title is Stuffed Fables. This is the new Plaid Hat Games adventure game from designer Jerry Hawthorne, who designed Mice and Mystics. They call it an adventure book game. which means the game is run.
I'm super jealous, by the way, which is one of the few rare times this happens.
This is one of the few times that I get to play something before you. It's rare, yes. This game should be out in the next month or so, at least is what I'm hearing. It should be very early in 2018. That's the last. I don't have anything official, and I don't know if they've announced anything official, but soon, basically. This is a family adventure game that is run by this adventure book, which has story elements in it, but also the maps and play spaces that you'll be working with in the game. The board is this book as well. There's 7 chapters in the game, so you start a chapter and you begin from that point. You read a story, and then it sort of lets you set up your characters. You play stuffed animals, stuffies, that belong to a little girl. And you are protecting her and going into like an alternate universe called the Fall to have adventures and sort of, figure out what's going on, solve the mystery of what's happening in this strange new land. The system is similar to Mice and Mystics, but it's a lot more streamlined. It's dice-based. At the beginning of your turn, you draw 5 dice from a bag, and the dice are colored. So white dice will earn you more hit points. Those are stuffing pieces. If you run out of stuffing, you collapse and you have to get restuffed in order to come back to life. But you can roll these.
Can I ask a real quick question
here?
So there's this death of sorts, right?
Yeah.
Where you're running out and you have to be restuffed.
Yeah.
How bad is this? I'm thinking about playing with kids.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Is this like game ending bad, or like it can happen a certain number of times?
It can actually happen a nearly unlimited number of times. So let me explain. When you collapse, you fall over. You can't take any actions until you gain more stuffing, either by rolling those white dice or your friends, your teammates, can give you stuffing. They can spend a die to just simply give you a piece of stuffing from anywhere on the board. So it's relatively simple to get somebody to stand back up again. You also reveal what's called a sleep card. There's a stack of these things, and many of them it involves what the little girl is doing while you're off on your adventure. So many of them say sleeping, so nothing happens. Some of them say restless, which may, depending on the page of the storybook you're in, have some sort of effect. It might worry the stuffies, give you some status effect that you have to deal with. And one of the last 3 cards of this deck says waking. The little girl has woken up. The only effect this has had, and we're 4 chapters in out of the 7, the only thing this does is change the ending of the story. You can't lose by revealing the waking card. So it's just sort of a good or not so good ending for that particular chapter of the story, which isn't that bad. So if you do get the waking card, it's not that big a deal, and that's the major mechanism for the bad thing that happens if you collapse. If all of you collapse, though, you have lost the chapter. But that's the only way to lose. If all of your stuffies
How many times does that happen?
It has never happened with our group yet.
Wait, are you playing with adults, you said?
I'm playing with me and my 2 kids. It is perfectly.
Yeah. I'm not upset by this, right? And normally I would want something to be super challenging, but for kids, I want something that feels challenging but is beatable.
I think that is definitely the tone that they succeed with here. It's possible to get in a situation where things go really badly for you and you get surrounded by bad guys. And we've come close. I think we've had 2 stuffies collapse out of the 4 playing at one time. And yeah, it's gotten close and a little hairy, but we've managed to pull it out. But we haven't lost yet. But you've got these colored dice. Some of them give you stuffing. Some of them go onto the minion track. The black dice go on the minion track. If that ever fills up, the bad guys take a turn at the end of the current turn. So unlike Mice and Mystics, where you fill in that cheese wheel and the bad guys immediately go, this gives you a little more warning. You might know, oh boy, okay, the bad guys are doing something. We can prepare. I can distribute dice to everybody, make sure they have defense dice. In order to block attacks, you need to have a die stored on your card that you can use to block attacks. Or maybe take out 1 or more bad guys before they move so that it's not as bad when they do so. And then all the other dice are good at doing things, like red dice are good for melee attacks, and green dice are good for distance attacks, and there's yellow search dice, and there's purple wild dice that can be used for any color. And then you get to spend all of the dice that you have. You can give them to other players. You can store them yourself. You can take these actions with them, move around the board, cross colored lines by rolling the proper die in order to move across those lines, and knocking out the bad guys. Then, if the minions have filled up their track, then they go, and then it's the next player's turn. And if the minions take a turn, all of the dice go back in the bag. Let's see, you continue through the storybook, reading all of these narrative elements. There's exploration spaces on the board that can trigger more things, more game effects, more objectives. Sometimes it's run around the board and get different items in order to complete objects, and then a bad guy shows up. Or sometimes it's just an explore this village and see what information you can find. There's other random exploration, like hidden toys, lost toys, that you draw a card and it says, there's a rabbit that's stuck in the mud. Do you help the rabbit? And if you do help, you usually get something good. And if you don't help, you might end up with some sort of a nasty side effect, or you might end up worried or scared. Wait a
minute, then why wouldn't you do it?
Sometimes you have to give up resources to do so. You might be giving up your own stuffing or giving up.
Oh, okay, I see.
Yeah, or sometimes it's a die roll when you decide to help that may be a good or bad effect. So you're taking some sort of risk or taking a little hit. It's not a huge thing, and usually, almost always, it's a good idea to help whatever toy you've run into. Occasionally, you might get robbed. That happens sometimes. But anyway, you've got those. You've got these status effects I talked about. You can get soggy. You can get scorched. You can get torn as these stuffies go through their adventure. I don't want to ruin anything about the story. It actually relates to like real life things that this little girl's going through. There's chapters that talk about her first adventure in a big girl bed, first night without diapers. It's a first day at school. It's all these real life adventures that then the stuffies relate to as they go on their adventures. It's well written. We've laughed out loud at the characters. It's a stellar game for playing with families. I'm really excited. The only downside I've had is that sometimes the adventures go a little long, but you can save pretty easily. Like when you turn a page, you can easily stop there, just put everybody's stuff in bags, and save the game there, pick up where you left off. It's incredibly easy to do so. And it's also very easy in between adventures because everything resets. There's no having to store dice or abilities or anything like that from game to game because it all just resets. I love it. Stuffed Fables, I can't recommend it more for families when it comes out later this year.
What would be your comparison of it to Mice and Mystics? If you could only have one, which would you pick?
Oh, boy. That's tough because I feel like Mice and Mystics has more possibilities. It seems like a more open game. Maybe depending on the age range of kids, I might recommend Mice and Mystics over Stuffed Fables. For my family, Stuffed Fables is such a perfect fit. My 6-year-old so loves stuffed animals. The theme, he is totally engaged with this theme. And so I'd have to go with Stuffed Fables over Mice and Mystics just for my family alone.
I want to play this with my family. All right. Well, let me talk about a game that is neither tiny. Well, actually, that's it. It's just not tiny.
That's not tiny, but epic indeed.
It is epic, and that's Heroes of Land, Air, and Sea. Now, if you see the box for Heroes of Land, Air, and Sea, it's about the size of the Ticket to Ride Centennial Edition. It's bigger than a Ticket to Ride box. In fact, it doesn't fit on the shelves of a Calyx.
There's a Ticket to Ride Centennial Edition. It's been out for 100 years?
Right. After the 10-year
the 10-year anniversary.
What is that? Decennial?
I'm sure there's a term for it. It's something Deca.
I'm looking it up right now because this is going to drive me nuts.
I'm sorry, I've totally derailed your description.
10-year anniversary is called what? And it is called... Oh, never mind. They're telling me what to buy my wife on the 10th anniversary.
Sometimes Google's not so helpful.
Never mind.
Oh, no, Tom, we're not getting away that easy. Hey, Future Eric here. I did look it up, Googled a little farther. It is a decennial. The 10-year anniversary is a decennial. Tom, you were close. Just not quite there yet. But I didn't know either, so, decennial.
Okay, so what I'm talking about, Heroes of Land, Air, and Sea. This is from Game One Games, who is most well known for their tiny epic games. And every time I play one, I say, this is great. Why does it have to be tiny?
Yes.
I cannot say that about this one, but I can definitely say this game is great. It is a reproduction of a real-time strategy style game. You are going to play either humans or orcs or dwarves or elves. There's 4 more factions that come in an expansion for it. You're going to have this board with lands on it. And I mean, in reality, this is very similar to Tiny Epic Kingdoms, but on a much more grandiose scale. You got plastic miniatures. You got each team has a bow or a flying unit, like the orcs have a dragon that flies them around. And you have castles on the board. And so each turn you're picking one of several actions. Other people can pick the same action that you pick. If you pick from one branch of actions, if you pick another branch, it lets you move around on the board. Your actions are building more units, building more buildings. It has that real-time strategy feeling. When you build buildings, you'll get special abilities. Each race has very different special abilities. You'll be moving around the board, finding areas and discovering these areas, having different small random events happen to you. But when you control areas, you'll get more resources that you can then build more units and buildings with. You can also attack other players. I shouldn't say can, you probably will. And when you attack other players, you compare the strength of your army to the strength of their army, and then each player plays a card from a set of cards they have, which is kind of like a more convoluted paper, rock, scissors type thing. So one card might be retreat, one card might be besiege, one card, each one adds a certain number to your strength, but also can be negative or positive depending on what card the other person plays. The game ends after one of the 4 X's has been met: expand, exploit, explore, and exterminate. So, like, for example, if you attack someone else's capital and win, game's over. If you build all your towers on the board, game's over. If all the discovery tiles on the board have been discovered, game's over. If you manage to get all your stuff out on the board, game's over. And then you count up the points, and the most points wins. I really like it. It's interesting. It keeps you intrigued. It's the first time it's brought one of these games to life, I feel. Back in the day, I played many of these games. There was StarCraft, which wasn't anything like that. There was Warcraft, the board game and stuff. But this one does a really good job at bringing that to life. And the combat is there, but also that whole build up your own thing. You have a very different army than everyone else. Each side has 3 heroes. And when you build your hero, you can, they have special abilities that they will be able to pull off. And it's a super cool production, too. I mean, this game is really neat. I think it's going to hit the sweet spot for a lot of people. It certainly did for me. I really like it. That's pretty much it. So, a lot of fun. That's Heroes of Land, Air, and Sea from Game One Games.
Next for me is a game I got to play the German version of. I'm not sure if Z-Man has released their English edition of Majesty for the Realm. It should be very soon. It is out now. This is a card drafting game. It uses a mechanism that's very similar to many others that you've seen before. You've got a row of cards, and on your turn you're going to simply choose one and add it to your tableau. And if you don't want the one that's first in line, you can pay one of your meeples and skip that card, and you could then pay another meeple and skip the next card all the way down the line until you find the card that you want. And if there are meeples on the card you take, you have then acquired those meeples. That's a mechanism that we've seen in many, many games. If you ever have excess meeples, you only get 5 that you can store for your next turn. So if you ever have excess, you get points for those extra meeples. Yay! What do you do with the card that you got? Well, that goes into your tableau, and there's, I think, 6 different possibilities in each game. And these all earn you varying amounts of points based on what else you have in your tableau or what other people have in their tableaus. There's like a wheat card, and then there's a brewer card that earns money if you have a wheat card. In fact, gives money to everybody that has wheat cards because the brewer's going to use wheat to make their beer. And there's several sort of hierarchies that work this way. There's also some knights, and there's defense that play against each other. If you draft a knight into your empire, you will attack all of the other players at the table up to their strength of their defense. If they have blue cards that meet or exceed the number of knights you've got, they're blocked from your attack. But if an attack goes through, you get rid of one of their cards, their sort of lowest value card from left to right. And it goes all the way up to like Majesty cards, royalty cards that earn you tremendous amounts of points if you manage to get those, and more points as you collect more and more of them. This continues until you've all drafted a certain number of cards. I forget what the actual total is. And then there's a sort of a majority aspect to this as well. So whoever has the most of those wheat cards gets a certain number of points. Whoever has the most of the royalty cards or the most knights, the most defense gets points as well. And that's essentially it. You keep earning points every time you draft a card, and then you earn points at the end for those majorities. Also, I think a complete set if you get one of each card. That's also a bonus. When we were at Essen, they were showing off the German version of this. The English edition wasn't available yet. Someone came up to our booth and said, "This, boom, is the greatest game ever made, and you all need to play it." And I said, "Okay, I certainly will." And so I was very excited to get a chance to play it. I think expectations, for me at least, were set maybe a little too high. People calling this a splendor killer and, the greatest game of the year. And I didn't get that in my first play. It's fun. There's stuff here. There's stuff to explore, and it's got a subtlety to it that I really like. It's a good game. But it is just a card drafting game. That's it. You go for the card that's going to make the most sense for you. I feel like the knights and the defense play a really big part in the game. If you have more defense than all the other players, they can't get rid of any of your cards. It's going to be easier for you to score points at the end. But of course, you've spent a lot of your actions getting defense cards. I guess you could overdo that. But then if you're constantly getting hit by the knights, then your resources and your cards go away all the time, and no one wants that. So I just wasn't blown away by it. It's a good game, strong game, and there's lots of variability. There's A and B sides to all of the locations that you're playing these cards to that have different effects and different scoring opportunities. So there's more to explore. I do need to play it some more. Maybe some of that subtlety will come out more, and I'll enjoy it more in future plays. But I just wasn't blown away. It was not, to me, the greatest game of the year. But still good. Majesty for the Realm from Z-Man.
I really enjoy this game. I think this game is going to have a lot of legs just because of how simple it is. So, yeah, I've just finally got the English version of it, and I've replaced my German. The thing was, the language barrier was very, very minor anyway.
Yes, I mean, it was mostly pictography. It was more just the rules. You could get an English translation easily.
So I'm talking about games in ascending order of how well they look on the table. I mean, Gaia Project looks amazing. Heroes of Land, Air, and Sea looked even better. But Grimm Forest whoops them both around the block.
Really?
Grimm Forest from Druid City Games is a game which is a bunch of fairy tales in a box. I don't want to say that it sounds like Dark Fables and things like that. It's not really. This is definitely a game you can play with kids. Each of you, I believe, is one of the pigs, and you're trying to build 3 houses. Although you don't have to build a straw, wood, and brick house. You can build 3 brick houses for all I care. You have some spots in the middle of the table, and each turn, these spots produce more resources. And then you will secretly pick where you'll send out your characters. You send out your characters, and if you're the only one there, you get all the resources. Otherwise, you have to split the resources. You then can spend these resources to build up sections of your house. But you also can get these cards, these fable cards, which will allow you can play these and do other things. Like you might send a big bad wolf out there, or a giant, or the troll under the bridge. Different characters from fairy tales, which can mess other players over. There's a lot of messing up the other players in this game. And you can get friends, people from fairy tales like Snow White and Cinderella, who will help you. They basically give you a special ability as the game goes by. And that's pretty much the game. The first person to build 3 houses wins. And I really like it. First of all, it's gorgeous. I mean, there's miniatures for your characters. There's miniatures for all the fairy tale bad guys. Like there's the big bad wolf. Each of you is one of the pigs. Although I guess there's 4 little pigs, but it doesn't matter. There's the Troll Under the Bridge. And these are like good, chunky, really like cool mini or not miniatures. And also, I should mention that all this stuff is in those plastic inserts from the company who I'm forgetting now, Game Trays, I think maybe.
Okay.
The same. Anyway, it's custom plastic inserts that all fit together. It looks just like the Mechs and Minions box.
Nice.
Inside. And it's just beautiful, and it's really easy to play. There definitely is a little bit of take that, and there definitely is kind of outthink the other players. So if you don't like that take that element, that's a little bit in there, but you'll still be able to get stuff, right? It's not like people are always taking everything you have from you. They might steal a resource or two, but you will get cards, and you'll be able to stop yourself and from being hurt too badly. And it's really a nice, light, fun game that has great pieces. There's so much plastic. All the houses are plastic. You're building them one layer at a time. Oh, I really enjoy it. It is a lot of fun. Highly, highly recommend it. Grimm Forest.
Yeah, I love the look of we got to see the minis that are almost not miniatures. They're almost maxatures. That makes sense. That at the Gamma trade show.
That's not going to catch on.
Several months ago. But yeah, they looked gorgeous. And so hearing that the game is just as pretty is pretty cool.
Right, but it's like a medium weight game, so I like that.
Cool. I finally got to check another game off of my must-play list, and that's Yokohama from Tasty Minstrel Games. This is a worker placement game with a geography aspect to it. You're trying to earn points like most Euros, but the locations where you're going to be placing your guys get placed out in sort of a pyramid map. And you have a certain number of workers that you start out with at the beginning of the game. You can earn more of them, buy more of them throughout. But you place them out on the board, and you're trying to create like a chain of your guys so that you can move around more efficiently around the board. But every time you trigger a location, you're going to pick up your guys, and then you have to place them out on the board again. You take your turn by placing either 2 guys in one location or 3 guys spread around the map, and then you can move your main guy around the board. As long as you have a chain of your guys, you can travel lots of places. You can't move through the other player's main pieces, so that you can possibly be blocked if you're not careful. You have to pay. I guess you can pay to go through them. You can't, however, activate a location where your opponents have their main guys. And then you get to activate the location that you managed to travel to, then picking up all of your little workers. And the more guys you have out there, the more pieces of wood you have out there, because you can also build houses and claim other locations that put more pieces of wood out. The more pieces of wood you have, the stronger the action will be that you take. So it's a timing aspect, too. I have to sort of build up a location if I want to take a real powerful action? In fact, if I get 5 pieces of wood, there's a bonus token I can grab that can get me extra things. I'm collecting resources and then trying to turn those resources in for orders to earn points. This is a fun game. I'm sort of bummed I didn't sit down on it quicker than this, because it's really neat. This likely would have made my top 10. I played it immediately after we put together our top 10 of the year, and I probably would have snuck it on there somewhere. But yes, I'm itching to play Yokohama again. Thumbs up.
Oh, good. I'm glad you like this one, because this is one of my favorite, and the Meeple Realty insert for this one is just amazing. It's so cool. It has like boats, the wooden boats that hold all your pieces for the game. And they also fit right into the box. Just fantastic.
Very cool. I'd have to get the game first, but yes.
Well, that is a lot of great games, all recommended games, highly recommended across the board. But now let's talk about something else. All right, folks, it's our annual talk about the Dice Tower and our fundraising for Kickstarter.
Our state of the podcast.
Right. Well, here's the thing. I mean, we don't. I really don't like talking about and asking for money, but at the same time, we need to. But instead of doing it the whole year round, we try to put it all in 1 month. So we run a Kickstarter, and if you're listening to this when it comes out, this is being released January 2nd. The Kickstarter is going to start, hopefully, January 4th at noon Eastern Standard Time.
Okay.
And this is a way that you can support the Dice Tower. But before I talk about how to support the Dice Tower, I guess we should talk about, should you support the Dice Tower? Well, if you listen to this podcast, there's a lot of costs that go into it. And there's a lot of different things that go on with this podcast. The Dice Tower Network is half this podcast and half our video that we put out. On this show, we put out one every week maybe I think we missed 2 weeks over the course of the year. So we put about 50 shows over the course of a year.
Mm-hmm.
On the video side, we produce around 2,000 plus videos a year. Last year we did like 2,300 videos.
Yikes.
Or so. And 1,200 of those were reviews. We also run Dice Tower News, where we keep track of all the different news that's going on. That bleeds through into my weekly show, Board Game Breakfast.
Mm-hmm. And there's an audio podcast for Dice Tower News as well. That's
correct. There is. We also have increased our video thing to do a lot more live playthroughs of games. And we really are working on expanding our convention coverage. Not so that we can go to conventions and have fun, because that doesn't happen nearly as much these days.
Well, we
want to cover them so you can know what's happening there.
Yeah.
So we did some 30-hour marathons and other live shows. The Dice Tower itself is made up of myself, Sam, and Z, and then our video editor, Derek. We have some part-time employees, which includes Eric and Rob, our webmaster. And so that's a big cost that we have for that. We have costs of going to conventions. We have costs of getting new equipment, and just there's a lot of internet costs, for different licenses and websites and music and all sorts of different things that we pay for, and these costs add up.
Mm-hmm.
And so we get the vast, vast majority of our financing from a Kickstarter that we do each year. And in this Kickstarter, you donate to the Dice Tower, and in return, we give you a small gift, which might be some custom Dice Tower stuff. It might be some promos for some games. We got a lot of cool promos, some never before seen, that you'll be able to get if you back the Kickstarter. If you can't afford to back the Kickstarter, do not feel bad about that. Do not feel like there's nothing that content-wise that you can't get otherwise. Like if you want to listen to the Dice Tower, you can always download it for free. If you want to watch Dice Tower, you can watch them for free. But if you can, we ask that you consider supporting our show. We had 35 million views last year on our videos. For downloads, well, I can't really do good numbers on our downloads for audio podcasts because they got really messed over halfway through the year. But it's in the millions, I think, too, for downloads. And so we appreciate that, right? We're really glad that you guys listen to us. So if you can, I just ask you, what is it worth to you? If it's worth something to you, we ask that you donate and then allow us to give you a gift in exchange for that. Or take no gift at all. That's even better, because then we can put all the money towards the Dice Tower. My goal is to make things better. I am always striving to say, how can we change the Dice Tower? Last year, one of the main changes we did was bringing Mandy and Suzanne on board. We really wanted to make the show more interesting and add more voices to the show, and so we made that change. And then Eric popped onto the video with Dice Tower Tonight.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have more ideas and more things that might be possible, and you'll see some of that stuff on the Kickstarter as it runs through. We're also trying to increase quality. Better microphones, better video cameras, just better in general. We have a headquarters now for the Dice Tower that we keep everything running. And so just all this goes together. If you can't support us, maybe you could spread the word. Tell other people about it. Encourage it. Spread it. And even if you can, spreading the word is certainly not going to hurt us. Tell everybody about this. And just think about this. It's a one-time thing. We're going to run this until the end of January. And we'll see what exciting things we can. My goal with Dice Tower is to never sit still, to always grow. I have some really cool ideas, and unfortunately I can't even share half of them because of just different things, that are going on behind the scenes. But you'll see them when they happen, and you've seen new video series that we've started, and there's some really neat things that we might be able to pull off and do. And we're also always listening to your feedback. If you have ideas like, hey, I would like to do this with the Dice Tower. Well, hey, maybe that's a possibility we can do in the future. And so that's it. That's my spiel. We hope that you continue to listen and keep watching. And we're excited about what's going to happen in the future.
Yay!
Do you agree, Eric?
I do agree.
On that note, we're making plans for our 2018 conventions. And so I can say at this point in time, we are confirmed that we will be at Gen Con. We are confirmed that we will be at Essen. And Sam, me, and Z will be at UK Games Expo. I believe those are the three we have that are totally confirmed, but we will have other ones. We will likely be at Origins. We will likely be, Sam and Z are going to be at Grand Con.
We're going to be at Dice Tower Con, right?
Oh, yes, that's an automatic. Dice Tower Con, of course, will be there. And so other cons, as we know them, I should have another one or two that I'll be able to announce in our next podcast or so.
Awesome.
All right, with that being said now, let me toss this over to Jeff.
Hey, we haven't heard from him in a while. It's time for GameTek with Jeff Engelstein, where we find out how games really work.
The ancient game Go has long been considered the pinnacle for game-playing computer AIs. Now, even as chess and other games fell, human pros continued to regularly beat the best programs. Now, that changed in 2016 with the development of AlphaGo from Google's DeepMind group. Whereas most Go AIs before had strategies and tactics that were programmed in, AlphaGo is a neural network that learned what good play looked like. It was fed a huge number of human-played games first, with entire histories of Go being fed in, so that it got a jumpstart on what typical patterns of play looked like. Ultimately, AlphaGo defeated Lee Sedol, one of the best human players. Now, back in October, the AlphaGo team announced that they had developed a new program called AlphaGo Zero. AlphaGo Zero was also a neural network that learned, but this time the researchers did not give the computer a database of Go games. They just programmed in the rules and let the computer play against itself. Initially, it made random moves, but gradually it learned what led to victory and got better and better. Ultimately, it was even able to beat AlphaGo. But the Google team did not stop there. They next generalized their neural network so that it could handle other types of games. For Go, they built in certain shortcuts, like taking advantage of the fact that Go positions can be rotated 90 or 180 degrees and still play out the same way. Now, they then set up the neural network to tackle 3 different games: chess, shogi, and once again Go. Shogi, for those of you not familiar with it, is a Japanese version of chess with a variety of differences. Pieces move differently. All pieces that get back to the back third of the board may be promoted to more powerful pieces, not just pawns like in chess. But the biggest change is that captured pieces may be brought back into play by the player that captured them, para-dropping them onto the board instead of taking a normal turn. This makes shogi more complex than chess, and the best shogi AIs still regularly get defeated by humans. Again, the computer was only told the rules. It was not told anything about good strategies or tactics or sample games, just the rules. And then it played against itself over and over again, constantly learning and adjusting its strategies. To see how good the AI became, the researchers had it play a series of matches against the best AIs out there. For chess, they pitted it against the reigning AI champ Stockfish. For shogi, it played against Elmo. And for Go, it played against the AI that beat Lee Sedol back in 2016. Now, after playing against itself 300,000 times, which took only 4 hours, AlphaZero was able to beat Stockfish. To beat Elmo, it had to play itself only 100,000 times, which took 2 hours. And to beat last year's AlphaGo took 165,000 games, or about 8 hours. If a human played, say, 3 games of chess every day, 100,000 games would take about 100 years to finish. Now think about that for a second. After just being taught the rules of chess, and then playing against itself with absolutely no guidance, it was able to beat the best computer AI in the world, which is way better than the best humans, in only 8 hours. 8 hours. And it does it in a very different way than Stockfish. Stockfish looks ahead a huge number of moves and has a sophisticated algorithm that scores each position to try to find the best sequence of moves. Stockfish looks at 70 million chess positions per second before deciding on the best play. AlphaZero looks at about 80,000 per second, which is still staggering by human standards, but Stockfish is looking at 1,000 times the number of possible moves, and it still does not perform as well. Now, AlphaZero also discovered the standard opening sequences, which have been developed over the years. Its two favorites, for those of you that are familiar with chess, are the English opening and the Queen's Gambit. The researchers provide graphs showing how frequently AlphaZero played different openings at different times during its learning period, and it's fascinating to see how certain lines rose and fell in popularity. For example, between hours 2 and 5 of training, the Caro-Can defense was a favorite, but after hour 6, its use dropped off to almost zero as it figured out ways to counter it. The Sicilian defense, a favorite of mine when I was on the chess team, became popular around hour 2, but then dropped off. At hour 6, a variant of the Sicilian emerged as a favorite, but that also went by the wayside by hour 8. Seeing these dynamics, the way that the AI changes over time, really brought home to me that this is a different kind of animal that seems alive almost. It's both scary and exhilarating, and it brings home the old saying that practice makes perfect. They ultimately let AlphaZero play each of these games 700,000 times, which took less than 24 hours, and it continued to improve slightly as time went on. Now, the very general nature of what they did is what is so intriguing about this research. As a game designer, think about the applications. I could give the rules to the computer, come back in 24 hours, and it will have played hundreds of thousands of games and be able to tell me so much more about effective strategies and balance. But people won't play the game 700,000 times. So what does that mean to me as a designer? What does it mean that we are designing games to be played by humans and not machines? I will try to tackle that question next time. This is Jeff Engelstein with GameTek.
I think if I were to play against myself hundreds of thousands of times, it wouldn't make things any better. That feels like a bad idea.
I'm going with Jeff.
Tales of Amazement. Raising my two kids, I took great care to not only potty train, but also game train them. And to my great delight, I managed to raise little gamers. But with the years passing and my kids getting into puberty, the interest in playing games with their parents dwindled. And playing games with them got less fun for us, too. With one girl and one boy just 2 years apart, having both of them in one room at the same time was generally not a perfect recipe for having fun. With Christmas approaching, things changed a little. Many years ago, my family, with all uncles, aunts, and grandparents, decided that only the children are getting presents. This worked out great, but my wife decided to bend that rule just a little. Besides the presents for the kids, there is always a present for our family of 4, most of the time being tickets for an amusement park, theater, or a football game. This year, my kids wanted to choose the family gift. My daughter, just recently being back from a student exchange with France, said her guest family played a game that was a lot of fun. She didn't remember the name, but it was with dice, little figurines going around a track, houses, hotels, and a lot of paper money. The hairs on my neck started to raise. Pulse got high. But before I could say anything, my son chimed in. Yes, he knew the game. It's called Monopoly, and he played it several times at a friend's house. Great fun. Good idea. That is what they wanted as a family gift. I don't recall the exact words that were spoken, but never, ever, not over my doorstep and not in my lifetime, might have been said. Not being a total jerk, a few days later I went and bought a copy of Monopoly and sneaked it into our house. The Christmas ritual in Germany is a bit different to that in the U.S. Our main event with church, food, and presents, in that order, is on the evening of the 24th. My parents and my father-in-law joined us for Christmas Eve. We had a delicious meal, and the kids got all their presents, including Monopoly. Us adults went back into the dining room, continuing our talks and closing the meal with wine and cheese. But then an unusual sound came from the living room. Both my kids laughing, not at each other, but having fun together. We went to look, and were surprised. They were playing Monopoly, and obviously enjoying it a lot. Long story short, we played Monopoly several times over the holidays, together as a family, enjoying each other's company. And once in a while, one of us pulls this game out, and we play it, smiling and thinking back to that Christmas day we enjoyed so much. Huzzah!
This is one of those stories where people are like, "Are you sure?" You know, they don't want this to be real.
Yeah, I imagine if you've never had the Monopoly experience and you were to open it up and actually read the rules and play it the way it's intended, you could have a good time. Enjoy it for what it is.
'Tis true.
I think we're tainted here in the U.S.
Monopoly for the win. Ha 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 ha. All right, let's get to a few questions.
Tom.
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 Hi, Tom.
How many meeples tall are you?
How many game pieces have you broken with that gavel you use?
If you could eat at a restaurant based on any game, what would it be?
And now, the Dice Tower will authoritatively, definitely, possibly, maybe, answer your questions.
Tom, which way to the game library?
David has a number of year-end observations that he wants to get our opinion on. So first up, I think that legacy games should be considered a total separate category and not be included in a Game of the Year category. Most people do not have time to play a legacy game. When we play games, we play something that can be completed in a night. Legacy games seem to be geared towards those who work in the industry and have time to play the same game for 15 weeks. We have a rule at our regular game night: no legacy games, because it is unfair to those who want to play one game that they can't commit 15 weeks to.
Seems like kind of a mean rule. No, I'm serious. I mean, we got some guys in our game group who play a legacy game. They played through Pandemic Legacy. Mm-hmm. And there were times where I was like, man, I wish those guys weren't playing Pandemic Legacy because I want to play some games with some of them.
Yeah.
And they're busy playing this legacy game all the time, but I don't know. But I mean, I don't have as much of a problem with that as why would you not include it in Game of the Year? It just seems kind of arbitrary.
It does. And the comment about seeming to be geared toward those who work in the industry, that's interesting too. I think you just, it's a different type of game. If you only want to play stuff that's a single session, a one and done, like most games, that's fine. You just don't have to deal with those games. But I don't see why you exclude
I'm going to take
it.
a huge exception with that work in the industry thing, because I'm trying to think who we're talking about. If we're talking about Tom Vassell and crew who reviewed the game, I can promise you they don't make Pandemic Legacy Season 2 because one group liked that game.
Yeah, no.
Pandemic Legacy 1 sold like hotcakes. And most people in the industry don't have time to play games 15 times in a row. It goes against the grain.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with the comment that it sort of locks people into this game for a long period of time. Like you said, you might want to play games with those folks at your game group, but they are for the foreseeable future playing this particular game for a bit. I found that with these, I have to have a dedicated group to play them. I know that I'm playing with my wife and kids Pandemic Legacy, and I'm not bringing that out to game night. There's a specific group for this. You almost have to have another game night to do it.
A quick insert here, David. We really like you, and we're glad you're a listener. So don't take it too badly that we're going to disagree with everything you say here.
Item 2. I also don't think escape room games should be considered in a Game of the Year award. This is a party game, in my opinion, and is not a board game. In my opinion, they are activities, not board games. Party games are never considered in Game of the Year categories. Wait.
According to who?
What? Party games are never considered in Game of the Year categories?
Well, then you better tell the Codenames people because they really swept everything when that game came out. I actually think there's some debate, whether an escape room game is an experience or a game. Mm-hmm. Although, but once you call it a party game, well, then you're deleting another category of games. You're saying legacy games and party games. Who's making these rules?
Right.
I would argue that an escape room is a game. The reason I don't include them is because it's it's hard for me to quantify like a specific one.
Right.
But a cooperative game like Pandemic is essentially a big puzzle.
Yes.
So is an escape room game. They're different kinds of puzzles.
Yes.
But they're still puzzles nonetheless. I don't know that I would even call an escape room a party game. I don't go to a party and bring an escape room game with me.
Right. I mean, it's a very limited party. You'd have to be I don't think the escape room games work very well beyond 4 people playing at once in most cases. So I'm not quite seeing this. I could see this being a different. I see putting the escape rooms aside as a different thing more so than I see the legacy games being put aside as a separate thing. Does that make sense? They are a unique experience. The one and done aspect may be more of an issue than other games. At least with a legacy game, you are playing the game several times to get through it, whereas the escape rooms are once, and that particular one is done for you. Number 3. Board Game Geek ratings for Kickstarter games are heavily influenced by those who spent big bucks on the game. So, of course, they are going to give it 10 stars. It's psychological. Probably 90% of the ratings are from those who backed, and who is going to admit that they backed a stinker. Therefore, they give it a high rating. I ignore ratings for games that are mostly in the market because of Kickstarter, especially a game that is a Kickstarter exclusive. I have noticed this at game nights. The person who teaches the game because they own it oversells the quality of the game. I'm guilty of this myself.
The person who brings the game will overhype it. I don't see how that is Kickstarter or not.
Right. Yeah. Any game you buy.
Any new game that you buy, you're gonna probably think that, right?
Yes.
And let's take a look, for example, at Dark Souls, the board game. I believe this was a Kickstarter, wasn't it? Maybe it wasn't a Kickstarter.
I don't know.
Well, that's not a good example if it's not a Kickstarter.
No, it wouldn't be.
But I promise you, there are a lot of Kickstarters out there that definitely do not have, like, stellar ratings. Miskatonic School for Girls. I could just go on and on and on and on about Kickstarters that came out, and people played them, and they were like, oh, yeah, this isn't very good at all. Kickstarter games are doing very well because of ratings, but Kickstarter games have been out for like 5 or 6 years now, and they're just now breaking into the top 10s.
Right. I mean, this is still
don't get me wrong. I think that there is people who are, I put a lot of money into this Kickstarter, and so I'm definitely going to give it a higher grade than I normally would. I definitely think that that's a thing. Just as I think there's a thing where people are like, oh, that was overpriced. I can't believe all that nonsense. I'm giving it a 1 for no reason. I think it balances out.
There's also the cult of the new aspect that's the same as anything you find at retail as well. When the game is new, people are excited about buying it, talking about it, and will be excited when they play it. And then ratings sort of settle after that initial excitement wears off. And that's true for both Kickstarter and non-Kickstarter games.
So Dark Souls actually was a Kickstarter. I've looked it up here.
I stand corrected.
And so that's one that's getting a lot of hype, and it should have even more hype because of the fans of the video game. I know this because they comment on my video.
Interesting. A nice little insight you have there.
Yes, they're very, very nice to me. And the fact is this is definitely not universally loved, for sure.
Number 4. It appears that you don't like games with take-that mechanics. Why is that? Some people love that. And I think your background is in war games, which is the penultimate take-that. Take That adds to the player interaction. Games like Kalis, Unfair, Pixie Queen, and Raiders of the North Sea have awesome player interaction. Explain yourself, Vassal.
Yeah, well, yes, obviously there's Take That where you are attacking another player in many, many, many games. And so I will even use that phraseology. But when I say Take That, it's something as a Take That game. It's usually a card game, and you are playing a card, and you have usually 2 options with these cards. They are good cards that help you and bad cards that hurt someone else. Mm-hmm. And many times they just hurt someone else randomly, which is really a bad mechanism because let's say, for example, we'll take Uno, for example, but let's say Uno and I could play a card on anybody. So I play draw 1 card on you, David. I've hurt you. I've helped everyone a little. It doesn't really jive for the whole game. I didn't help everybody at the table.
Right.
So Take That needs to be, it can be in a game, but if it's just random and you just play cards on other people, I'm not a big fan of it. If it's in a war game, which is obviously Take That, that's different. But if it's a war game where everyone's attacking everybody else, I'm not as big of a fan of that because it's a little chaotic.
Right.
Kalis has a bit of Take That in it, but it's planned to Take That. You can fight to get that provost. You don't have to let someone else have it. Mm-hmm. Raiders of the North Sea. There's a little bit of take that after other players, but you're still doing your own thing.
Right.
Unfair, I think, to take that as too powerful, which is why I don't like that game as much.
Yeah, I think almost it's the strength of the amount of control you have over somebody else. Like, if you can mess with somebody, take some of their resources, prevent them from getting to a space, that's interaction that's worthwhile. They still have stuff to do. You don't say, you know what, you don't take a turn. You're done for this turn. That's the sort of take that people respond to as being very, very negative. I think of Mealborn as the epitome of this concept, where you're trekking along and somebody goes, you have a flat tire, and you're not going anywhere until you fix that flat tire. You can't make progress. You're just stuck. And that's the kind of thing that we maybe rail against.
I also think, though, that, you mentioned that these games have awesome player interaction. There's lots of ways for people to have player interaction than me just playing a card and them going, ha-ha.
Yes.
Now, sometimes that can be done successfully. There's a few ha-ha moments in Cosmic Encounter. One of my favorite games, for sure. But if that's the whole game, I will say I don't really like it as much. All right, but David, keep writing in, because we love to hear differing opinions, and in the forums, people might tell us that we're wrong on all of this.
Sure.
Noel asked a question. He said, it occurred to me recently that I've rarely, if ever, heard of you use the term filler game. I'm guessing you guys didn't make a conscious decision about this, but I'm wondering if your avoidance of the term is indicative of something. Do you think a filler game as a valid or useful category, or do you prefer not to think of games in terms of fillers and main courses? Just curious.
I think this discussion has come up a few times before. There were some people, we've used filler game, certainly, as a term, and there were those that were upset that we were being dismissive of it as a category, that some people enjoyed those lighter games as their main course. I've always thought of the term filler as being not like fluff, but just something that is quicker and lighter that can fill in the spaces in between any other things that you're doing during the day. I don't think of them as better or worse than a particular game. It just is a good indicator of weight and playtime. I think we use it. I don't think we've been avoiding it. Have you been avoiding it?
I have been avoiding it, actually.
Oh.
But not really, like, it's just because I'm trying when we talk about games, and I fail on this a lot. But whenever someone complained about our podcast today, and they say, these guys are always explaining things, we know what a lot of these terms are, but the fact is a lot of people who tune into this podcast don't always. And
True.
Filler is just like a common word, so I will usually just explain what filler means. A good example of this is Magic the Gathering. There's a lot of keywords on Magic the Gathering cards, like trample and flying and all that stuff. And even though these things have been in the set for 20 plus years, some of these keywords, they will still often explain what they are in the cards.
Yeah.
Because you may not have come across that before, and it reduces the barrier of entry. So I might say filler, but if I say filler, I'm going to almost always immediately follow it up with what a filler means. Like this game that you play at the beginning of the night or end of the night. I also think filler has been overused, because the deeper someone gets in a board game, the more insane their idea of filler is. Like, we played Ticket to Ride, that was a fun filler. Yeah. I'm like, what? No, that's not a filler. Well, the way we played it was filler. Well, you're insane.
Yeah, my game group plays Raw as a filler sometimes.
Yeah, and I don't, you know what I mean? If you're like really heavy into gaming, that's fine, and you might call it a filler. That's really not useful to most people, though. And me and Eric have to fight that, right? Because we've been playing games for decades now.
Yeah.
And we know thousands of games. And so we have to be careful that we don't get so entrenched in all this terminology that we start using it all the time, and people who are new to the podcast might not know what we're talking about.
Right. Yeah, we never want to be insular. Always want to be open and allow somebody who's listening to us for the first time in this episode to at least join in the discussion somewhat easily.
All right. Well, let's get started here to our top 10.
Starting up the Wayback Machine.
Woohoo! I'm in a DeLorean. Let's go.
It's a Dice Tower Top 10.
The Dice Tower's Top 10 list is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc. Cool Stuff Inc. Cool stuff in stock at coolstuffinc.com.
Hey, we're going back 5 years ago to 2013.
Oh, boy.
Man, you know, we do this every year. It's a tradition I started. I don't know when I started it.
I don't know. As long as I've been around, I think.
You think so?
Here's
the thing. I know that Eric and I definitely did it in 2013. We talked about the best games. In fact, wow, I did not even look at the list till just now. I'm looking at them, and my list has changed considerably.
Yeah, I've got a number of things that have left and shifted, although a few things have stayed the same. So this is kind of interesting. I also thought it was interesting because, Tom, you put your list down before I did, and I guess you were bored or waiting for a video to render or something because you put comments down on where you thought I was going to put games, which was very interesting.
I did. I put comments in there like, okay, well, this would be where Eric said this game. So instead of writing the game and guessing it, I wrote a comment about that game, which, since none of them exactly matched up, looks ridiculous.
It does. One of them you wrote, "Is it really a game?" And I'm interested to know what you thought I was going to say at that point.
Oh, we'll get there. Okay, so let's get started and see what happens.
Let's do it.
Number 10.
All right, my number 10 is the original Polish version of Mysterium, which was Tamanish Domostwo or something like that.
Is that 5 years old?
It's 5 years old. I don't think it made a huge splash in 2013. I think it was maybe a year after or so. But yeah, that's the date on Board Game Geek. And at this point, as we rank these things, that's the date we have to go with. But I love this game still, and I still haven't played the Americanized version or the Asmodee version. I'm still, playing the old Polish one. And with the cooperative game, with the crazy dreams and the ghost that can't talk, and I think it's great. I haven't played this with the kids yet, and I really should. And it's still on the shelf for sure. Tomanish Domostwo, or Mysterium, my number 10.
All right, so this is the one where I wrote, what did I write there?
Oh, shucks.
I was just hoping you'd put nothing personal, but you did it.
I kind of figured. Spoiler.
All right, so I'll delete that comment.
Okay.
My number 10 is higher on Eric's list.
All right.
What? A crossover? And the game that was my number 10 was not on my list at all back in 2013. I'm pretty sure I didn't play it till 2014 for sure.
I think that's the case for me too.
Number 9.
Number 9 I hadn't played in 2013 yet, and that's Brussels 1893, which has this cool grid where only certain actions are available at any given time. There's this little frame that sort of arranges things. It's a worker placement game, but it has some nice depth and variety to it. And I don't own it, but every time I have the opportunity to sit down for this one, I do enjoy it a lot. Brussels 1893, my number 9.
So in this one I wrote, is it really a game?
I think Brussels is.
I had hoped. Well, not I had hoped. I just thought you would stick concept on your list.
Ah, yes. It was shortlisted for sure.
Yeah, it was shortlisted for me also. And I thought, I don't know. I actually love playing concept, but I tend to play it more as just an activity than a game.
Now that's a filler.
Yeah, I guess so. My number 9 was not on my list. Let me look in 2013 and see. Man, my 2013 list was so different. No, it wasn't on that list then. And that is Russian Railroads. Now, this is partially because the German Railroads expansion really boosted it for me. I still haven't played American Railroads. I like Russian Railroads, and I've never won it. In fact, I've almost always been massacred in it, and yet I still like it. It is the very epitome of a points game, and it even has a small problem with, like, I would say maybe 2/3 through the game, I go, I cannot win. Literally, mathematically, unless one of my opponents is going to just, walk out of the room and call and say they quit, on their drive home, there's no way I can pass them. But I still like it. There's just various ways to get points in this game as you move these different train tracks down. It's a worker placement game, and you're trying to maneuver your workers to get the resources to extend your train tracks. You have 4 train tracks. The farther you extend them, gives you points every turn in various different ways. You have to try to figure out which one is the best one to concentrate on at any given point in time. Some really unique, fun things there. Russian Railroads, my number 9.
It's a great game. I've only played it once, but those 4 tracks are really cool, and it's hard to figure out how you're going to make progress in the game. And the scores can really start to jump as the game continues in those last couple of rounds. There's a lot of points to be had. Enjoyable choice.
Number 8.
My number 8 is Gravwell, the game about trying to slingshot your way out of an anomaly of space. And you're playing cards that will attract you to the closest object and hopefully like fling you past the other ships. You can play cards that repel you. It's got a little bit of a 6-nimmt aspect where everybody's playing cards simultaneously, but then they activate in a particular order, which can really mess up your plans. It's a unique game. I really enjoy Gravwell, my number 8.
I like Gravwell, too. It just didn't make my top 10 in this particular instance. My number 8 is what? Higher on Eric's list? I didn't even expect this one to make Eric's list, but I'm pleased that it did.
Woo!
That's the clue.
Number 7.
My number 7...
Before Eric says his number 7,
Yeah.
I forgot to put a comment here. Let me put it.
Yeah?
Not fun. There we go.
Yeah, thanks. My number 7, which Tom has made fun of for the past 5 years because it was my number 7 last time, is Quicksilver, the game about Zeppelin racing, which I think has a...
I just don't get that you think this is like a top 10 of the year. That's what boggles my mind.
I love it. I like the aesthetic. I like the having to decide how to steer your dirigible and messing with the speed and shifting gears and getting weapon cards. And there's a card that has you shaking a fist at your opponents, and it's got a mustache, and it's great. Quicksilver, number 7.
Paradox, which is their next game, was a much better game, I thought. I want to say that because I don't want this to come across like I have this vendetta against Quicksilver. I really don't.
I love it. You just don't like the box cover.
Well, I know I really hate the box cover, but that's not why. If I went by hating box covers, there'd be so many games I wouldn't like. My number 7, and I didn't mean it to line up this way, is Level 7 Omega Protocol.
Yeah, you did.
This was actually number 2 last time. And I just don't play it as much anymore. This is essentially... XCOM, the board game, and it's really cool. You go in there and you're some Marines and you're shooting up aliens. It's like Descent, but it's done in a somewhat more realistic fashion. Realistic, I guess, in a sci-fi way. But what I mean is you're not finding treasure chests with big guns in them. You got what you have at the beginning of the game. You just got to survive. But your fear, your adrenaline that you spend is what the bad guy uses to spawn more guys, and they come out of hatches. Think Aliens almost as like Aliens, the board game. Seems like a good way to do this one. Still a pretty phenomenally cool experience. Level 7 Omega Protocol.
Number 6.
For my number 6, Tom's predictive comment was just another Feld, which is totally wrong because my number 6 is Police Precinct, which was also Tom's.
I thought you were going to put Bruges on your list.
Yes. I didn't like Bruges as much as many others do. Anyway, Police Precinct was Tom's number 8 as well. Cooperative game about police. It was my number 8 5 years ago. I think it's actually moved forward a little bit due to its second edition. The second edition cleaned up a lot of rulebook issues. Not too many component upgrades, but just sort of put a nice shine on the game. It's an enjoyable puzzle trying to catch a murderer as you also try and keep the chaos of this city from, just overwhelming everything. There's lots of expansions and scenarios and stuff for it. It's a good time. Police Precinct, my number 6.
Yeah, I really like Police Precinct too. I love the theming of it. I'm still kind of surprised that 5 years later we still don't have any other good games based on the police force. It just seems like this would be a rife, interesting theme to have in a game.
You'd think.
I don't know what it is. Don't most kids want to be a police officer when they grow up at some point?
Maybe that's not so much the case anymore. I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's true. But yeah, okay. Well, we'll see. My number 6 is BattleCon: War of Indines. This was my number 4 in 2013, so just dropped a little bit. This is a 2-player fighting game, and it's a little more complex, although I played it often enough now that I kind of got everything down in it, the different steps before this, and I just love the sheer variety in it. There's honestly too much variety. Level 99 just doesn't know when to stop when they're adding stuff to games. So since then, they've introduced BattleCon Devastation of Endines and more BattleCon War for Endines, and there's 237,000 different characters, which is a slight exaggeration, but not too much. And they all play very differently. It's just really a neat game. So that's BattleCon War of Endines, my number 6.
Number 5.
My number 5 was on the list 5 years ago in the number 4 position. That's Forbidden Desert, Matt Leacock's sequel of a sorts to Forbidden Island. Forbidden Island was almost too close to Pandemic. It was sort of a dumbed-down, simplified Pandemic. Forbidden Desert is its own thing, with these shifting sands and this storm in the center that moves around. I love that system as it moves around the board, as you're trying to assemble pieces of an airship and escape from the desert. Great family cooperative game with some cool mechanics and great components. Forbidden Desert, number 5.
And I had guessed that this would be your number 3, and that's why I put certainly better than the first.
Gotcha.
Let me cut that there and put it there. All right.
Yeah, just for the
I don't know
records.
why I'm leaving these comments in. It doesn't matter.
for when the archivists check our show notes.
Number 5 for me is Welcome to the Dungeon. This is a filler. And it wasn't on my list back then. I think it probably just missed out because I was like, it's just a little game. But you know what? This is definitely one of those games that I played more than probably any other game on this list. Let me look. No, that's not quite true, actually. But it's one of the most played games. I just like it. You are all together betting on an adventurer. Will this adventurer make it through the dungeon? You make the dungeon harder, or you take away some piece of equipment for this adventurer, or you say, you know what, I can't do this, and I drop out. Until one person's left in, then they have to go through this deck with the adventurer. Really entertaining, fast, simple, fun. Welcome to the dungeon.
Number 4.
My number 4, Tom had on his list in the number 10 position. That is Mac Gertz's Concordia, a game that he has a departure from the rondel, except that mechanism is now using these cards. You have a whole hand of cards, and you have to use most of them until you play a card that lets you pick them all up, but you spend a whole turn to do that. You're moving around the board, collecting resources, and trying to earn victory points, and earning, as you acquire more cards into your hand, earning the opportunity to score more specific aspects on the board and tuning your strategy to the cards you've acquired into your hand. It's a neat puzzle. Tricky, but I like it. Concordia, number 4.
Yep, I agree. Everything that Eric just said. It looks boring as all get out. But
well,
it's really quite a good game. In fact, I'm very interested in playing Transatlantic.
Yes.
I have not played that yet, but this is from the same designer, same kind of system.
Yeah. And also of note, this wasn't on my list 5 years ago. I guess I just hadn't gotten it to the table yet.
Yeah. Well, it came out at Essen, and there was so many games coming out. And that cover you looked at, you were like, yep, next. Mm-hmm. I wish he would keep designing games like this and not go back to those old Rondell games. Well, I like these better.
Okay.
My number 4 was, let me see if it was on my list in 2013. I think it was. It was number 7 in 2013, and that is Francis Drake. Was it called Sir Francis Drake? Nope, just Francis Drake. This is a game which was, it's like 2 halves of a game put together. The first half, you are in the market buying the supplies you need, and it uses that Tokaido type thing where you're moving your piece as far as you want to, or you're placing a piece as far as you want to down the path to get resources, but you can never go back. So if you want the good stuff, you need to shoot ahead of everybody else. But you could also take your time and slowly get more stuff, but it's not as good. And then the second half, you send your ships out and fight pirates and do all sorts of things with the goods, with the stuff that you bought in the first round. It works together really well. Highly recommend it. Francis Drake.
I really should give this another go. The last time I played this, it was late night at Board Game Geek, and I was just not in the mindset, I think, to really dig into this one. It can be a little long, if I remember correctly.
Sure. Let's go to your next one.
See, segue.
Number 3.
My number 3 is Firefly. It was number 5 years ago. It's gone up a little bit as they've added expansions, fleshed out the map. I know it can be a little long. which is what Tom was alluding to just now. But
coincidentally, I thought this was your number 2, and you noticed I wrote way too long.
I did notice that. But I do think it embraces the theme so well. It really captured that sense of adventure and danger as you move around. It's more than just a pick up and deliver game. It's really an adventure game as well. You need to prepare for the unknown in this game. But it really brings to life that flavor, and it's still a favorite. Firefly, my number 3.
Yeah, no, that one didn't make my list at all.
Yeah.
I don't think it's necessarily a bad game, but the length of it just kills it. Although, what do I know? This game has had so many expansions. It's obviously done very well. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, there's my number 3. Which is Eldritch Horror, which also might be considered to be long. However, if you play it with 3 or 4 players, then I think it works better. And I don't even see this one on my list at all. But why is that? Because I think this one has just gone up for me as the years have gone by. And each expansion adds so much more cool stuff, and without overburdening the game like Arkham Horror did. So if I play with a few players, not too many, which is how I normally play it these days, I really think Eldritch Horror, it takes the Cthulhu theme and adds an Indiana Jones flavor to it. So think like The Mummy. The Mummy is a good way to describe this now. Oh, maybe a scarier mummy. Maybe like the modern Mummy? I haven't seen the modern Mummy, so I don't know.
Sure.
But Eldritch Horror is my number 3.
Number 2.
My number 2 was my number 1 5 years ago. That's the Pathfinder Adventure card game. I think it slipped just because it hasn't hit the table as often. My son and I used to play this together, and other games, other time sinks have taken the time that we would be playing that. I do remember New Year's Eve's playing this one late into the evening. I still love the system, though. I like that slow motion deck building, the discovery of new objects. Do I keep this in my deck? And the way that the different adventures sort of shift how everything works. You might have special rules that apply for a particular adventure that twists the mechanisms a little bit. I love it. I love that I've got this big old box that still has plenty of adventure left in it. The system's cool. Pathfinder Adventure card game, my number 2.
Yep. I figured Eric would put this as a number 1, and I wrote, has faded with time. Because I liked this when I played it, right? And then I never got any, I got a few of the small expansions, and that was it. And they keep coming out more sets, and I'm like, I don't know, it just feels like the same thing over and over again. I wasn't as excited about this one as I thought I would be, but it is popular, and still with some people, they love this game.
Mm-hmm.
My number 2, it's a criminally neglected game by Eric Sommer, and that's Caverna.
Yeah,
come on now,
it's
Eric.
criminally
this game is
neglected.
Amazing. This took Agricola and buried it. I like Agricola a lot, but Caverna was so much better.
Yeah, I sat down to watch like half of a game of this and said, okay. And I don't know. I just don't feel the need to play it. Someday.
I'm telling you, you need to play it. It's amazing. I love this game. And this game, it's actually shocking to me that it is not my number 1. But was it number 1 back in 2013? It was.
Yeah.
But that's because my number 1 game wasn't even on my list in 2013. In fact, I barely liked it. How could that be? I'm supposed to be talking about Caverna,
yes.
But I'm trying to build up to my number 1.
Yes.
Anyway, Caverna, fantastic game.
And finally, number 1.
My number 1 also was not on my list 5 years ago. I don't think I had played it yet. It wasn't on my radar almost at all. And that's Viticulture, the game about making wine. There is such charm to this as you.
But wait.
Wait.
Also, my number 1.
Number 1 synergy. I can't believe it.
That almost never happens, especially in a year.
It's very true.
Right?
The charm of this is really what elevates this. It's a worker placement game. It does a lot of things that other games do as well, but everything works so well. It has this flow. It all makes sense. You grow grapes, you harvest the grapes, you age the wine, you turn it into wine, you let the wine age, you fill orders. You get people who are going to make your winery better. You hold tastings, you build structures that make it easier for you to grow more grapes. It all just has a thematic sense to it that I feel like it's relatively easy to explain because it all makes sense. Even though it's a pretty deep, complex game, it's not that hard to grasp. I think it's been a success with everybody that I've played it with, and I'm delighted that I've got a copy. I haven't yet taught it to my wife, but I should, because it's my number one game. How about you, Tom?
Yeah, when I played this game back in 2013, I was like, it's okay. I like it, but it felt missing something. Well, it was missing something. Two things. First of all, they added the El Grande rule to it, which totally changes the game, where you have one meeple that you can put where other people have put their meeples.
Oh, yes.
That makes a big difference because you can never be completely blocked out, at least by one worker. You still might have people go to a spot you want to go to. You're like, oh, man. But by one worker, and that really changed the game. But even more so was the release of Tuscany. I'll never play without Tuscany. And I can conclusively and decisively say that is a correct statement because he eventually released the Essential Viticulture, which included a lot of stuff from Tuscany.
Yes, although not the Tuscany board, which I haven't played with.
Oh, but he put that in the Essential Tuscany expansion then. It's very confusing.
Yes,
but essentially, if you don't know what to get Viticulture Essential. That brings you a lot of stuff that it's the base game. And then play with the new board from Tuscany, and you'll never go back. It's so much better.
Okay.
But I love this game. Every time I sit down and play Viticulture, I'm like, wow, this is it's a great worker placement game. It even scales well. Now, I don't know that I would play with 6 very often.
It goes that high?
A few weeks ago in our game group, some people were playing Viticulture with 6, and I walked by, and I basically was like, ha, 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 foolish people. I would play this with 6 if I knew the 6 people and I was handpicking them. Like, you? Yes. You? No. But it's best. I mean, but it plays good with 2. It plays great with 3. It plays great with 4. I enjoyed it with 5, 6. I don't know. But still, it really scales well. It has a really strong theme to it. The theme works. Yeah. And it offers such diverse, fun things to do. It's that whole, you're watching stuff grow and you're getting money and, oh, man, it's so full of goodness.
Mm-hmm.
I love this game. This was an easy number 1 for me, and it's amazing how far up this one has come. That's Viticulture. So let's go to, real quick, before we get to the People's Choice, let's talk about the games that fell off the list.
Oh.
Okay, so first, last time in 2013, we both had City of Iron as our number 10.
Yep.
And that just fell off because other better games moved on, that's all.
Yeah, yeah.
Number 9s, both of ours fell off. Carnival Zombie for me and Patch History for Eric.
Yep.
I like Carnival Zombie a lot still, but it just doesn't get to the table as much, and I'm still waiting for that elusive second edition that has never come out.
Yeah. I think Patch History, it's a little crunchy, a little sharp-edged, and a little hard to teach. I also don't own it, so it just hasn't hit the table.
Then our number 6s... Wait a minute. Well, I'll get to that in a second. Our number 6 is Space Cadets Dice Duel for me, which I liked a lot. Unfortunately, Kemet has just...
Captain Sonar.
Captain Sonar has just murdered that for me. After playing Captain Sonar, you're like, what? What about... And Eric had the Duke, which, by the way, was my number 11.
Yeah, the Duke, again, hasn't hit the table. I've tried to introduce it to my son, who's he's in chess club, and it seems like it would be a perfect fit for him, and he just wasn't interested. I need to try again. It just hasn't hit the table as often as I would like.
My number 5 in 2013 was Kemet, which would be my number 1, but I didn't even find this when I was making the list because it's listed as a 2012 game.
Yeah, same with one of mine, I think, let's see, Crossmaster Arena
Stations?
I had on my list, I think because it was right on the edge, but it's a 2012 game.
Your number 3 was Trains and Stations.
Yes, that fell quickly for me. I was very excited about it.
It's fallen for me a little bit too.
And I was playing it a lot and playing it with lots of groups of people, and it's still a neat game. I guess I wasn't. It really did fall. I'm not sure what was the flaw. I think I just had other train games that I felt more excited about, and just wasn't hitting the table.
And my number 3 was Duel of Ages 2, which I really still like a lot. And I just that when I made the list this time, I was like, well, that's pretty close to Duel of Ages 1, so I'm not going to count it. That's all.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there's no real good reason there. So anyhow, that's that. I also want to give a quick shout out to Robot Turtles because this is my top 10 list that I made here. But Robot Turtles had such a profound effect on me that my kids enjoyed it so much. And one of my kids, who normally had problems playing games, was able to pull this one off. Teaching kids how to program. So that one has a special place in my heart.
Yeah, it is a great game.
All right, People's Choice. Number 10, Concept. I like Concept. Concept was on my short list. I liked it a lot. Number 9, Welcome to the Dungeon. Number 8, they disagree with Eric and say Caverna. And this would be much higher on the list if Mayfair put any effort into Caverna. They really just like pushing Agricola for whatever reason. Number 7, Bruges, the Stefan Feld game. Very popular that year. Number 6, Eldritch Horror. Number 5, Viticulture. Number 4, Bang the Dice Game. That's the influence of Sam Healy, who loves that game.
Sure.
Number 3, Forbidden Desert. Number 2, Concordia. And number 1, Sushi Go.
Huh.
I like Sushi Go a lot, and I enjoyed it when it came out. It was Sushi Go Parties, the one that kind of was like, wow, this is amazing. I just want to put it in my top 10, but it's definitely one of the best filler games ever to come out.
There we go, using that word again.
Well, he opened the floodgates, man. Now I'm just going to keep saying it. Filler, 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 filler. I like to play fillers. That's the filler song.
Yes.
It was written by Millard Filler.
Millard
back
Filler?
In 1942. It was in the middle of the war, and people were looking for fun things to do with their families. And so they came out with the filler. And that was the radio jingle. It wasn't sung by someone like me. It was sung by a trio of women. Not the Andrews sisters. It was the Anderson sisters. They're not quite as well known.
Right, yes.
And it was just like, filler, 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 filler. I want to play a filler. But they had harmony in there, and it sounded beautiful.
Yes, yeah. Sounds almost like a toothpaste commercial.
Okay, well, that's that. Hey, once again, we'd like to remind you, our Kickstarter is starting on Thursday. Watch and be ready. For that, also, all kinds of cool things. We'll be doing a live 30-hour marathon in a week. So a week from Thursday, and lots of different people will be there from the Dice Tower playing games. I think there's 10 of us.
Wow.
Does 10 sound right? No. I got 6 rooms at the hotel. So there is 13 of us.
Wow.
Well, yeah, you say wow, but there's actually, if any given point there's 4 or 5 people playing a game, you're still playing half the time.
Okay.
So lots of different games going on. Lots of fun for sure. Keep an eye out for that. Next week, you'll hear Mandy and Suzanne. Meanwhile, until next time, I'm Tom Vassell.
I'm Eric Summerer.
And you've been listening to The Dice Tower.
Thanks for listening. Promotional consideration has been provided by game publishers in the form of review copies of games. This episode, number 536, was recorded on December 28th, 2017. Coming up next week, Mandy and Suze take a look at some hot new board gaming apps, and in 2 weeks, Tom and I will be back with our top 10 games from 10 years ago. This podcast is sponsored by listeners like you. Thank you for your continued support. And speaking of support, the Jack Vassell Memorial Fund is dedicated to providing support to members of the board gaming community in their hour of need. If a catastrophic event has become more than you can handle, find out how we can help at jackvassell.org. The Dice Tower is produced by Tom, Mandy, Suzanne, and Eric, with assistance from Itai Perez, Derek Porter, and Rob Seary. My phobia of drinking establishments for semi-aquatic rodents is provided by Terror for Mink Bars. Timothy Pinkham composed our theme, and hosting is provided by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games at great prices at coolstuffinc.com. Let us know what you think of the show by posting to the Dice Tower Guild at BoardGameGeek.com, following the Dice Tower on Twitter, or by emailing us at dicetower@gmail.com. And don't forget to visit the other shows in the Dice Tower Network, including The Broken Meeple, Start Space, The Game Pit, The Secret Cabal Gaming Podcast, and Board Game Blender. Find out more at dicetowernetwork.com. Until next time, from all the gang at the Dice Tower, have fun gaming. So are any of the games we just talked about going to make it to your 30-hour marathon?
Ooh, that's a good question. You mean the ones from 2013?
Yeah. No.
Although I have half a mind to play Duel of Ages 2, now that I've mentioned it there. No, none of them. Possibly Welcome to the Dungeon. Because that one fits well in that situation. And Concept, right? Concept might make it.
Yeah. Well, we played Concept in the one that I did.
Yeah. Well, that's some thoughts I had. Yeah, sure. So anyhow, yeah, cool. Wait.
Yeah, cool.
I have a song. I feel a song coming on. Filler.
Filler.